Remember the low-code, no-code data project series that I started to do a few weeks ago? I have too much going on and I'm not going to be able to do a complete set of reviews that I had anticipated. So I'm just going to wrap this up in lean fashion, kind of put out there the core, minimal value and not wait for weeks and months for everything to be complete and perfect. So I'm just going to wrap this up for now. Hopefully you'll find this useful and I can move on. Remember, low-code, no-code data project. That's what I wanted to figure out. If I want to do that, what is the best platform or what are the options out there? So I tested Dataiku, C3.ai's ExMachina, SageMaker, GoodData, Quicksight, the AWS suite, and Snowflake. So I'm now going to let you know what I think of that. Remember, I'm also starting from the value chain, the data value chain that I had put together in the video before that, which entailed generating data, which I'm not covering here, managing and storing data, processing and transforming data, using data to do predicting and predictions, and visualization of data. These are the things that I looked at. So first, with managing and storing data. So I started by trying out C3.ai's ExMachina. Now, C3.ai's ExMachina, as far as managing and storing is concerned, is great at loading a large piece of large data set in CSV or in a format like that, or connecting to a large data set and making it work pretty quickly within your framework, right? We'll refer to my last video to see how it actually works from a UX perspective. So good connectors and great for loading data in a large data set that you can work on straight away. Snowflake for managing and storing data is just fantastic. It's clearly the standard today. It's extremely easy to create a Snowflake account. It's extremely easy to connect to with the software that you want to use, and it's just the performance is amazing. The ease of use is great. It's extremely reactive. It's very easy to kind of navigate and understand. Snowflake is really clearly a standard there. Dataiku, as far as managing and storing data, on the other hand, is not the place for you. Dataiku has the data studio where you can actually load and put data in there, but this creates, for small data sets, it would be fine for a quick small project. But as soon as you start dealing with large data sets, working within the data studio is not, the Dataiku data studio is not an option, right? You need to have another backend such as Snowflake with which to connect. And from that point on, Dataiku will leverage the processing power of whatever backend you have, because Dataiku does obviously do SQL processing using the native SQL features of whatever backend you have there. So Dataiku is not where you want to store your data, for sure. As far as management and storage is concerned, AWS is of course an option. I used S3, so S3 is very easy to use. You have your buckets and you can put your data in there. It's very easy to access once you have your endpoint, and that's fantastic. But it's going to limit you to CSV, data models and so on. It's not a full database, so that means that you're not going to be able to leverage, like from Dataiku, for example, native processing power and capabilities. You have RDS for that in the AWS environment, RDS, Aurora, and the database backends. But I found those, remember, low, no-code bias here, just simple data project that can be done by a person who's not a developer. And I find RDS is doable, it's fine, I did manage to make it work, but it's complicated. Managing your entitlements and permissions and so on in AWS is not easy. I find that it remains a bit of a mystery to me. I did manage to make it work, but to be honest, I'm not sure exactly how. You know what it's like, sometimes it works and you just don't touch it and you think, okay, fine. So yeah, the AWS environment requires a bit of skill, which for this kind of low no-code type of mindset, I don't think was ideal. As far as the next data value chain step is concerned, processing and transforming data, which is obviously where data is that's where the work happens. So Snowflake is not the place for that. Of course, Snowflake has a powerful SQL engine and all kinds of code environment that you can use for that. But it's a very technical environment. There's no low-code, no-code kind of data processing going on there at all. The low no-code options are basically SageMaker, C3.ai's ExMachina, and Dataiku. And there, the jury, didn't stay out very long for the following reasons. SageMaker The UI and UX of SageMaker is terrible. Just by design, the design of it is absolutely horrible. It's clearly, an engineering team's idea of what a UI is supposed to look like. But for a regular user who wants to kind of, feel the data and so on, it's really awful, and I would not recommend that at all. No doubt SageMaker is very powerful if you have an engineering team, but again, remember that's not the focus here. Then we have C3.ai. So C3.ai I talked about in my previous video, as you remember. C3.ai has a lot of potential, I think. The logic of the in-memory processing, large-scale kind of infrastructure available, kind of no hassle and so on. That is very powerful in C3.ai. Unfortunately, the UX and the UI of C3.ai is just not up to scratch. It's a very immature product at this point. And, just to give you a sense of it, I wanted to buy a license for it just to keep going and kind of get to know it better. And they couldn't sell it to me because I was in Europe, right? So that tells you as much as you need to know about how ready for prime time this product is, meaning not at all. Plus, on top of that, like I said, the UI is it's just too light. It doesn't work very well, and they need to do a lot of work on that. From a process and transform perspective, clearly there's no question about it. Dataiku is the standard. It's what you need to be able to do if you want to play in that space. You basically, load your data sets in there, or at least connect to your data sets from there. And from there, you have a whole suite of tools which are extremely easy to navigate, to use, to configure, to play around with, to visualize while you're doing your processing. Dataiku is just a pleasure to work with from the point of view of data. It just kind of does everything you need it to do. The one thing about Dataiku that you need to be kind of cognizant of or a bit smart about is how you build your data pipeline, depending on your data access, on the access to data that you need to do. Dataiku can do pretty much everything, but some of their features, like built-in features, some of them don't translate to, for example, native SQL of your remote database, right? So my data was in Snowflake. Eventually, when I managed to figure that out, my data was in Snowflake. I was using Dataiku to do in-database processing, meaning remote processing using the local compute power, and that was fantastic. And then I found one thing that I wanted to do to the data, which had something to do, I think, with date formatting or something like that. And the built-in feature of Dataiku did not natively translate to SQL, or at least to Snowflake SQL, I guess. And so that created a kind of a problem that I had to solve. So the question was, well, should I do this beforehand, or should I do this later? Should I do it differently? Because the minute you have to do something in Dataiku that is not natively supported within the SQL engine of your remote platform, well, that means that the data is going to have to be repatriated by Dataiku to be processed and so on, and that's going to take forever. So you need to be smart in how you build your data pipeline like that with respect to the performance of the data processing itself. But the capabilities are just amazing. The US is fantastic, and there's no way to do better than that, I don't think. I did try to use GoodData and Quicksight also to do some of this data processing, to join data sets and to clean them up and things like that. There are some very limited capabilities in GoodData from that point of view. There is a language that you can use to do some metrics management and dimensions management, a bit like you do also in Quicksight. But I did find that this aspect of things was better managed in Quicksight, I found, at least, than GoodData. I spent quite a few hours in GoodData trying to join 3 data sets, and I just didn't manage to do it in a way that worked. I couldn't get the metrics to work. And their data manipulation language, which they have a special interface for, looks quite nice on paper when you read the documentation and so on, but it's very much an engineer's way, again, of thinking about how to process data. It's basically an SQL-like language, and it requires a lot of thinking about your structures before you can actually do anything useful to your data. And I didn't like it at all. Compared to Dataiku, there was no question which one was the best. Quicksight was... I did a bit less with Quicksight, but from that point of view, but I did manage very quickly to kind of create some metrics and dimensions in a nice, easy to manage kind of way. So I think maybe that is worth looking into some more. As far as predicting, kind of using your data to do, machine learning and things like that, I did not test the Snowflake capabilities there. I didn't even look into them. I'm not even sure what they are. So that's what it is. But in any case, going further in Snowflake than just connecting to your data set is a technical activity, right? It's not low code and no code kind of stuff. Then in C3.ai's ExMachina, I did try a couple out just to see, but the UX and UI in ExMachina is just so bad from the point of view of performance, as well as from the point of view of actually visualizing and interacting with your data set, that I gave up. It was too much hassle, and Dataiku was always beckoning, and so I went back to Dataiku. Dataiku for doing low no-code predicting. Right now, there's no other platform that does that the way they do. It's such a breeze to use. Again, it's easy. The whole sampling logic, it works brilliantly. You can always visualize what's going on, like you have your graphs, your charts. You can analyze your data set before you actually predict it and learn on it and things like that. The capabilities there for Dataiku, again, are second to none. SageMaker, I didn't even go as far as predicting because the whole data preparation side was such a nightmare that I just gave it up. Also, it costs an arm and a leg if you leave it up and running for a few days. Be careful because you do run up costs in Amazon, in AWS pretty quickly. And the thing is, with some things more than others, right? Like just having a SageMaker environment in some kind of state is costing you a lot of money just to be there, even if it's not doing anything. Just having an S3 bucket obviously costs you next to nothing. So be very cognizant in AWS about what are your instances and your services doing, because they do kind of, the clock is ticking. Now, as far as visualization is very interesting. I did do a fairly substantial visualization with Quicksight, with GoodData, with Dataiku. I did use also C3.ai's ExMachina. Now, the best visualization, the kind of nicest to work with, I have found, is clearly Quicksight. Quicksight, I didn't know it before I started this thing. I happened upon it when I was using AWS, and it was really nice. It looks nice. It's easy to configure. The options that you have at your disposal are very user friendly. And like I said, you can quite easily switch between visualization and managing your metrics and things like that in a way that is quite close to GoodData. But I must say I enjoyed Quicksight better. I'm not saying this is like the gospel on this topic, but it felt a bit nicer. It's also a newer tool, but it's not an immature one like C3.ai. C3.ai's visualization is absolutely horrendous. It's just terrible. It really is actively bad. The way they force you to manage your series and your data in your graph, it's just insane. So C3.ai is always the same story, right? Very powerful, but as far as usability, they need a lot of work to be done there. Dataiku does visualization, and to be honest, Dataiku is one of the best visualization tools out there for sure. Although I do think that Quicksight is more powerful as far as visualization is concerned. If you want to manage your own dashboards, right? The dashboard management and your elements of your dashboards in Quicksight is really very nice. GoodData also, and Dataiku also. It's very nice, but the best in there I found was Quicksight. The great thing, however, about Dataiku is that your visualization environment is fully integrated in your whole data processing, predicting, transformation, and so on. So it's very easy in Dataiku to go from a visualization. You think, oh, well, actually, maybe I want to look at this data a slightly different way. It's very easy to kind of walk back up the chain, make the changes, use a different model, enrich your data in some other way, and then your visualization is going to be in the same environment. If you're using Quicksight with other data management tools, well, it might be more clunky to go and make some modifications that eventually are going to impact your visualization. So, in a nutshell, next time I want to do a low no-code data project, if I can afford Dataiku, if I have Dataiku in my company, I don't think I need anything else, apart from obviously a database type of environment, data lake or whatever. In Dataiku, you can do pretty much anything you like, right? You may prefer GoodData or Quicksight or Tableau. I didn't talk about Tableau because I have trouble with Tableau for some reason. I have difficulty handling it and getting my head around it. I would use Dataiku if I could afford it, because the problem, of course, is that Dataiku is a very expensive platform. I wanted to buy a license for Dataiku. I couldn't, because basically it's either the community edition, which is what I used, but then the community edition is free if you have a machine that you can install it on, or if you want to have a kind of a fairly extensive environment and managed services and so on with Dataiku, it's going to cost you enterprise licenses and so on. So if I had Dataiku, I would use Dataiku. If you have Dataiku clearly in your enterprise, then it's very easy for reasonably technically literate users to actually do their own data projects. I think C3.ai has the potential to become that, but it's just still quite far from it, and they needed to do a lot of work. and to think about their market also, I think, and because the whole thing, like, you can't buy it because you're in Europe, then you're out of luck anyway, so it's not an option. So if you have basically already a clean data source, like you have some environment where your data tables are they're all organized properly, they have all the right columns and dimensions and extracts and views and so on. If you have that somewhere and you can easily extract some kind of table that contains the data that you want to visualize, then you can use GoodData. It's very good. You can use Quicksight, but although Quicksight has less connections to data sources than GoodData, I used Quicksight with my S3 bucket, which meant CSVs only. You could obviously use it with RDS and things like that, but RDS ended up also costing me a lot of money for very little benefit, to be honest. Yeah, you could use the QuickData, Quicksight, Tableau if that's your thing. If you have clean data already there that you don't need to enrich and process in any way. If you need to do data cleanup and processing, I mean, if you have dirty data sources or different sources of data that you need to merge and clean up and enrich, well, Dataiku is the only game in town, I think, to be honest. If you don't have an engineering team to do that for you, if you need to do that yourself, you can use the community edition. You can ramp up an instance in AWS with the community edition of Dataiku on there. The cost is very reasonable, and if you have like a Snowflake database, well, you're not doing too bad. Although now that I'm thinking about this, there's some limitation there, right? There has to be a reason why you would pay for the enterprise license, and that is actually the reason for it. So if you're a company and you want your users to be able to be autonomous in doing their data projects, Dataiku is what you need where you need to go. And there. So I did mention the cost. Dataiku either very expensive or free, but the free version will have limitations in terms of how flexible you are to manage your data. GoodData, Quicksight are very reasonably priced, but you need to have clean data somewhere else. And C3.ai is fairly affordable on paper, or at least on the screen. But if you live in Europe, you're out of luck, you can't buy it. And in any case, right now, it doesn't work, especially if you want to do any kind of interesting visualization. Snowflake has a visualization engine, but it has a bit more of an engineering feel to it. It's for more advanced users, so I wouldn't recommend it as something that you want your regular, let's say, data literate users to go and work on. So that's it for this review of this environment. No doubt you have other experience, your mileage may vary. This is my experience of spending a few weeks or like a few full days over a few weeks trying to do work on data without doing any coding. And I have my view of this now. I'm sharing that with you. I hope this was useful to you if you want to do that, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.